Hi there, today we're going to be discussing the Ace of Wands, which looks like this. I actually pulled this out of the deck when on the 1st of February when I was making some goals of the month for myself, so it's a very apt card to pick, I think. One thing to say about this card is that it's not associated with any of the decans that the cards 2 to 10 are, and therefore it doesn't have any corresponding astrological associations or Fresh angels, which I talk a little bit about in the notes that I put up on my web. So we'll take a look at the symbology of this. One thing to note, just brought this book to light here. This author does discuss the things like the inscription on the blade of the sword here, the Greek inscription, and his explanation is in fact wrong. It's totally at odds with Crowley. I think this guy just sort of made it up on a whim, and he does a similar thing to this card, which is the Ace of Discs, which we'll come to in due course. Again, there's an inscription on that which I think he just guesses at. So this is one of the things, things that might set you back, as it did me, looking at books which the author really hasn't thought too much about what the original intent of the card was. So it's not to say that this is a completely useless book, but it's not the book that I would use for this deck. Okay, so what we'll do now is look at the symbology of the card and then how that applies in a reading. Okay, we'll just look at the Ace of Swords in detail. Essentially, it's a sword piercing through some clouds that part, and its tip goes into a rather nice looking crown. You've got a sun on the horizon there. Very, very closely followed the Rider-Waite card there. Its position on the Tree of Life is B.O.T.A. It doesn't have any decan or associated astrology, as I think I mentioned. So its divinatory meaning is closely follows its position on the Tree of Life, really. B.O.T.A being the spark of the Tree of Life, if you take out the 3 veils of negative existence that go on the top. So B.O.T.A is the origin of the Tree of Life, similar to the card being associated with the beginning of new ideas and clarities and insights. So it's a beginning, as is all the aces. And it's also very much linked with Tippereth, as we'll see. With regards to the 3D, the layered Tree of Life here, it's in the world of Yetzirah. And this relates to the Tetragrammaton, and also the nature of the swords themselves, which are very much related to conflict. So Tetragrammaton, you've got the Yod, Hey, Vow, and then final Hey. So we've got fire of the wands, water of the cups, air of the swords, and earth of the discs. So the swords are the sun of the mixture of fire and water. And although you can't see it in this card, the sword is supposed to be green, and green is a mixture of the red of the the yellow of the sun on fire, and of the blue of water. So it's a mixture of the Yod and the Hay to produce the element of air. So we have inherent in these swords this quality of conflict, which is has been picked up with the Eastern mystery tradition. They basically say that the mind is the enemy of higher states of consciousness. So conflict being the intrinsic nature of the mind, it always divides, it separates, it analyses, which is the opposite of basically what intuition and moving into higher states of awareness from there is. So quite often the mind unchecked can cause a lot of havoc, as we see out in the world. So the idea of the Suit of Swords then, and working through this suit, would be really to turn the mind into something useful and practical for the world, so that we're turning our mind away from the worldly sort of dross to the more renewed clarity of the higher mind. So that's the underlying philosophy, I think, for the Suit of Swords. If we go on to the symbology here, we've got a crown of yellow and white. The yellow representing the purity of Keta, sorry, the white representing the purity of Keta, and the yellow representing Tiphereth of the sun, the solar influence. Said, if we go back to the Tree of Life, that Christ was a living embodiment of Keta, and he was associated with Tiphereth here, and the sun. Because Christ was known as the Sun God. He called himself the Amen in the Book of Revelations, which is similar to the Amen Ra, the Egyptian sun god. So it relates to the embodiment of enlightenment, the realization of enlightenment and one's true nature whilst in a body. So he's like a conduit for spirit. So the crown really stands for quite a lot, higher states of awareness, and stands for a lot more than what sits on the Queen's head. Crowley also says that the blade itself is made of steel, similar to which represents Mars, which is the will, which is this inscription here, which says Thelema in Greek, and it means the willpower to move forward for greater insight. And the hilt is made of copper, which is to do, or represents Venus. So when we hold the sword, we've got to have our link in with the quality of love that wields the sword, because just having clarity and insight doesn't necessarily mean to say that our role in the world will be a productive one. We can use that clarity and insights for all sorts of evils. So it's necessary to wield the sword in a humane way. The serpent is coiled around 6 times. 6 is the number of the 6th Sephiroth, which is the sun, as we said. We've got 2 moons here to counteract the solar influences of the card, just as a balance. This sphere here is supposed to be in the centre of the circumference of the sun. I think that's pretty much it for the symbology, other than to say that there's 22 rays here of the crown, which represent the 22 major arcana of the tarot. And just to say that obviously the clouds here represent the time that we've not been able to make clear decisions and see our way forward, but those times are now past, and we have the greater insights following us now. So in terms of its divinatory meaning then, if we finish off, the Ace of Swords represents clarity and insight, breakthrough, a eureka moment. We have a new perspective on life that was previously unclear. So it's a good time to act and set your minds to accomplish your goals, as it represents, as I said, new ideas, inspiration, original thinking, creative vision, that sort of thing. It also reflects social causes as well. This sword is similar to the Magician's sword, and it's also the sword that is on the, or in the adjustment card, which is the in the major arcana, similar to the Justice card, but with the adjustment card the figure is actually standing on tiptoe, and it's balancing with the sword, and the sword is the other way up in that card. So this element of justice is like social justice. It could be that you're passionate about human rights, the environment, personal beliefs, that sort of thing. It may be that we actually want to invest our energies into that. If we look at the reversed meanings of the card, it could mean that in our pursuit of our goals, whether it be social or personal, we use our force and clarity of insight in a negative way, such as extremist social movements, or we basically are just generally using our insights to, and whether it hurts people or not is not our concern. So I think, as I said at the beginning, we've got to hold the sword with love. Or a reverse meaning can represent a period of time when the clouds have sealed our vision over again, and we need to take a step back before making big decisions or moving out in new directions. And another way it could mean, another perspective on its reverse meaning, could be to do with the fact that we don't stick up for ourselves enough, and we're too passive. We don't have the confidence to go with the insights that we could have. So I think that's enough for this section, and we'll just apply those to some specific cards in the minor arcana in the final section. Okay, we'll finish the section on the Ace of Swords by looking at it in terms of its relationship with other cards. So if this is the first card in a Celtic cross, then the card that crosses it can be either supportive or obstructive. So we could go through a few examples of this, looking at the Three of Discs. I would say generally that would be a supportive arrangement, whereby someone is looking to start a new business adventure or project, and they have the willpower and clarity to get that off the ground. So those two would work very well together, and the emphasis of the Ace of Swords would be expressed obviously within the suit of discs, which is mainly to do with material things, and the Three of Discs with the pyramid type structure there is a creation of something tangible. And if we pair that with, say, the Eight of Wands, then that would be encouraging us to, if there's a business opportunity here now, to act on it, because it's something that may not be with us for very long. There's a double side to that, obviously the Eight of Wands, and that is don't act in haste, but nevertheless make sure that to make sure that everything is in place before actually risking something financially or going into a business adventure. But it does for me indicate that the opportunity is there for the taking. The Eight of Swords is obviously an interference with the Ace of Swords. You've essentially got things again in the way of your clarity, so it's not a good time to act. It's probably time to still take some time out and clear away these swords here, so that we can again refocus and redirect what really is important to us. But still, with that arrangement, the Ace and the Eight, we still have that intention with the Ace. So it's probably important, or I would emphasise that the positive aspect of the Ace, that they do actually want to move on and create something new, have a new perspective on life, and probably searching for clarity. But the Eight reminds us that there are things that are in the way of that, And so we could draw other cards to highlight what is actually obstructing them at the time. Move on to the 4 of discs there, which is all about consolidation and knowing your boundaries. So I would say with the ace and the 4, the 4 is about stability, but there's also a certain amount of stagnation there. But with this emphasis, I would say that I would just say for them to move on and move forward, but know where their boundaries are, make sure that they're not overstretching themselves, and that they, whatever they do, just to bear in mind to keep a stable base, so that you're not spreading yourself too thin, either financially or emotionally or intellectually. In any sphere, the 4 there sort of puts a full stop on that, as Crowley says. So it's a little bit of a guarded message there, but still a positive one. The 7 here, 7 of Wands, is all about struggle and not quite attaining what you want. So it might be a frustrating time for them, whereby they've the Ace of Swords, as we mentioned, can also be to do with social concerns and standing up for what you believe in a more social and cultural setting. So the 7 of Wands is all about struggle but not quite getting there. As you see, the sparks of the wand there are flying everywhere. There's no real focus there. So again, it might be something in the client's past whereby the struggle are not quite achieved, and therefore with the Ace they have new perspectives on the situation to actually overcome the struggles of the 7. So that would be one way of interpreting that. Again, with the Ace, it's a double-edged sword. It can be seen to be acting and carrying out your will. As we've said, the sword has the inscription of will in Greek on the blade, but we have to make sure that our actions are not affecting other people adversely, and so the 3 of Wands is actually saying that make sure that you're using your new clarity and insights for the greater good, and people are not being harmed by them. And finally, we can just add the 9 of discs here. So again, this would be in the suit of discs, we're looking at material things. We're looking at reward of your hard work, reaping what you've sown, but in a positive way. So with the Ace there, again, it's energy working through the suit of discs. We have a very good pairing here, and it's basically saying if someone can actually apply themselves with the clarity that they have, then in an earthly way they will be richly rewarded for that. Okay, so I think that is more than enough examples there. I could go on, but we're halfway through the minors now, so I don't want to go through every single card. You get the gist of it. Okay, so take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.